Hello learners, I'm Dr. Shubhangi Vaidya from the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies, IGNOU. And today I'm going to talk to you about some of the problems that are experienced by NGOs in the course of their functioning. This is a very important issue to address because only when we know what are the important problems and issues that NGOs face on a day-to-day basis that we can tweak or we can adjust our management strategies in order to cope or in order to deal with these difficulties in an effective manner and perform the role that NGOs are mandated to do. So let's begin by talking about the role and relevance of NGOs. Now, as you know, NGOs play a very important role as collaborative partners along with governments, international organizations, business houses, etc., for building a better society. Particularly in the context of the 21st century, we find that the role of NGOs is multiply magnified. The roles and functions of NGOs include some very, very important activities like advocacy, which is basically giving voice to those sections of society which are underrepresented or which need an additional boost in terms of their entitlements and rights. Another very, very important function of NGOs is that of providing services. And we find that this is particularly so in those areas where other organs of the state and civil society have not really been able to be of much use. So for instance, we see that NGOs do a lot of work in sectors pertaining to marginalized communities, to tribal communities, to women, persons with disability, the elderly, children, and so on and so forth. And another very important role that NGOs play is the role of acting as catalysts for social change. So social change is a very, very crucial aspect of the work that NGOs perform. As such, we find that NGOs also require managerial expertise in order to effectively understand and leverage their strengths, deal with their weaknesses, and strategize to achieve their objectives. Yes, learners, it is very important to bear in mind that NGOs are not just organizations of social service or organizations that are working from an ideological slant. NGOs are very, very important organizations that also need to manage their functions and to make use of basic principles of management in order to discharge their responsibilities in the most effective way possible. So, what are some of the sources of strength, or what are the real vital elements that contribute to NGOs being such an important resource in any society? We find that commitment to a cause, commitment to service is a feature that characterizes most good NGOs. We also find that dedication, a certain desire to make change, a certain desire to serve underserved sections of the population, this is also a feature that NGOs exemplify. NGOs are also marked by flexibility in their approach. Because they are dealing with grassroots issues and grassroots problems, because they are actually dealing with people on the ground, their approaches towards problem solving are bound to be more flexible rather than any rigid bureaucratic style of problem solving. NGOs also demonstrate an ability to respond to local needs. As you know, many NGOs have actually been formulated or have actually started their activities precisely to respond to the felt needs or to the unmet needs of certain sections of the society which have not been served by other institutions of the state. We also find that NGOs have a close interaction with communities, and because of their intimate knowledge of their stakeholders and the people that they are actually involved with and working with, this becomes a source of immense strength and immense value that NGOs can contribute to the society. And we also find that an innovative approach is one of the major sources of strength of NGOs. wherein they think out of the box, wherein they engage in activities which may not actually be engaged in by many other institutions of society. And therefore, all these various sources of strength make them effective instruments or make them effective partners along with other agencies like business, government, etc., to bring about social change, as we have earlier discussed. So, what is the need for management skills for NGOs? We find that due to the complexity of the contemporary socio-economic and political milieu, NGOs require to be very familiar and well-versed with financial, legal, environmental, and social issues. The world is a complex place today, and engaging in various activities, which is what the NGOs do, requires a very, very thorough understanding of the context within which they operate. For this, practical management expertise, knowledge of how to deal with various agencies, and effective communication skills are crucial. Learners, you may ask, what is the need for management expertise for NGOs? Well, management is not just something that is, the domain of corporate houses or big businesses. Management is an activity that we engage in all the various aspects of our lives. For instance, a housewife manages the household resources in order to run the house with a limited budget. So similarly, if NGOs are well versed in management techniques, they can organize and marshal their resources in the most effective way possible and thereby do a great deal of good in the society as a whole. So let's talk a little bit about some of the important problems and challenges that NGOs face. The first and crucial challenge is that of finances and funding. Money is the bottom line. We see as many NGOs are dependent upon donors and external funding, they may not be able to complete certain projects to their satisfaction. They may have to move from one project to another, basically follow the funds. And this leads to a situation where they themselves may not be very satisfied with the kinds of outcomes that the different projects and activities that they are engaging in have reached. Ad hoc grants, dependence upon foreign funding, which is uncertain and may frequently dry up, are also a very, very important problem that NGOs face. Those NGOs which are heavily dependent upon foreign funds also have to deal with or also have to effectively understand the various legal and financial regulations and different aspects about how they can attract foreign funds, and there has to be a very, very great deal of emphasis upon accountability, particularly in situations where foreign funds are involved. This is one area in which many NGOs actually don't live up to the expectations, and this leads to problems in the long run. We find that due to financial issues, continuity and expansion of NGOs tends to suffer. Another very crucial issue is that of leadership. We find that many NGOs have emerged or have been born, if you will, as a result of the efforts of a single dedicated individual or a group of highly driven individuals who have tried their level best to address a particular social problem or issue. So what happens is that when the NGO starts growing, driven by these highly motivated and highly effective individuals, these NGOs come to be identified by the identity of that individual alone and also tend to be dominated by him or her. So they tend to be really seen as the personal property or the personal agenda of a certain individual or a group of individuals. While on the one hand, this is good because the individual can bring on board all their talent, all their dedication, all their passion, the very real danger here is that such NGOs run the risk of ad hoc, whimsical, and highly centralized decision making. So the central person, the key actor in the NGO, then tends to be the person who dominates the NGO, the person who cannot be challenged, the person whose leadership cannot be questioned. And when leadership becomes something that cannot be questioned and cannot be held to account, then it becomes a problem for the institution or the organization as a whole. A very important problem that many NGOs face is that due to their over-dependence upon a certain kind of leadership, or the founding leadership as it were, they are unable to develop a second rung. And because they cannot develop new leaders, because they cannot promote a new line of leadership, we find that their very viability is threatened when the core team is gone. Younger members may feel marginalized. They may feel that they are not allowed to participate in decision making. They may feel that they have got no growth prospects, that nobody really is listening to them. So what then will really be the motivation for young people who also want to make a difference to stay on in these NGOs? So leadership issues really lie at the core of many a problem that is faced by NGOs today. Let's talk a bit now about organizational problems. Many NGOs, we find, may have very good intentions, may have very good service delivery. They may be highly motivated, they may be highly committed. However, due to lack of proper administration, lack of proper maintenance of records, housekeeping, keeping the books balanced, that is the accounts, the financial accounts, and the legal and regulatory requirements, we find that some NGOs run into a lot of trouble. We find also that they are unable to nurture and retain employees by providing proper salary structure, by putting in place a rewarding career path and a working environment. So, like I said, the intent may be very noble. The people working in the NGO may be highly motivated, highly talented people. However, due to administrative difficulties, due to an inability to effectively administer or organize the NGO, much of the work that organizations do is then lost because people leave. It may be in all kinds of trouble because their records are not in order, and so on and so forth. One very serious issue that we see a lot of is that certain NGOs, because of their political or their advocacy commitments, may in fact take up a very confrontational stance. So, I quote Arun Mehra, who is the chairperson of HelpAge International, who says, "A valuable role that civil society organizations play is advocacy for change in the established order. Advocacy strategies can be confrontational or persuasive. Confrontational strategies can be sharply disruptive or peacefully persuasive. An alternate strategy for persuasion is thought leadership." So, let me emphasize this point once again, thought leadership. An NGO does not have to pick up fights, an NGO does not have to engage in confrontational approaches in order to make its point known. By actually using thought leadership, by trying to promote change by propagating different ways or alternative ideas about how to address issues, NGOs can contribute richly towards our understanding of certain problems and how these problems can be addressed. One of the important issues that is faced by NGOs these days is that there is a lack of public participation and an erosion in the values of community service. We can say that this is due to the growth of materialistic, consumeristic, and individual-centric values in the market economy. We also find that there is a good deal of apathy on the part of the bureaucracy, political leaders, and little or no inclination to involve NGOs in meaningful ways in partnerships for development. Another very serious problem that is faced by NGOs is that many of them are actually used or actually become a front for all kinds of activities which can certainly not be considered as social service or voluntary work or serving the society. In other words, vested interests and corruption. During the past few years, many organizations have sprung up which claim to work for the cause of helping the poor and the marginalized. However, unfortunately, we see that under the garb or disguise of being NGOs, they actually are nothing but unscrupulous players who use their NGO status to get money from donors. This is a very, very unfortunate thing because many people who actually want to help the underprivileged, who want to help the marginalized sections of society, may give their hard-earned money to such unscrupulous players. And instead of helping the society, we find that these people in fact end up being cheated. So there is a very, very strong issue of credibility, a very, very strong issue of reliability that NGOs are facing because there are so many black sheep who spoil the reputation of the entire sector. In more serious cases, we also see that NGOs may be used as a front for certain nefarious activities such as money laundering and other such criminal activities by unscrupulous persons. And this tends to give the entire sector a very bad name, which is extremely unfortunate because so many NGOs are doing such good and such valuable work for the society. An important issue that is faced by NGOs is how to get the right people on board. There is a real lack of well-trained, efficient development sector specialists who have to do a lot of very, very difficult work when they work with NGOs. They need to be very well grounded in the socio-economic realities of the country. They need to be willing to take up difficult assignments, sometimes in remote and underdeveloped places, and also deal with the very complex issues involved. In other words, there is a real human resource crisis for this extremely challenging profession of working in NGOs. So getting the right people with the right level of understanding, commitment, values, and yet a work ethic and managerial capacities. This is really something which is very challenging and something that is quite difficult. And we hope that by engaging in courses like this, we will help many an interested candidate to learn the basic skills and to learn the various capacities and capabilities that would make for a rewarding career in NGOs. How do NGOs overcome these challenges? How are capacities to be built? How is the sector to be strengthened? Well, firstly, the promotion of volunteerism, the promotion of corporate social responsibility initiatives is very, very crucial. There has to be an environment of wanting to contribute to social welfare and to social good, which is very crucial. The bureaucracy should also coordinate better with NGOs and engage them in extension-oriented activities and promote them in this manner. We've mentioned how funds often play a huge role in actually making an NGO be successful or dying an untimely death. So there is an urgent need to publicize and disseminate the availability of grants and aid, especially in areas where the number of NGOs is very limited, underserved areas in short. There should be an attempt to tackle the urban concentration. We find that many NGOs are located in the big cities or in the metropolitan cities, whereas there are large sections of our society, large sections of our rural hinterland, which are really not served by NGOs. So we need to ensure that NGOs also start operating in those areas where they are really needed as well. NGOs themselves must improve their organizational systems and professionalize their operations. We had discussed this earlier, that there is a dire need for administrative rigor, for being able to do their work in a manner which is accountable, in a manner that fulfills the needs of good practices. And also put in place proper training policies and build a cadre of dedicated professionals and a human resource base. Document, disseminate. We cannot overemphasize this enough. Proper documentation of the work that NGOs do is crucial. There are many NGOs which are doing amazing work in various sectors of society. However, because they are not able to document, because they are not able to disseminate the work that they are doing, nobody really knows about them. And this leads to a good deal of duplication and replication of work. And therefore, how to generate effective reports, how to keep proper records, how to make available knowledge and information to all stakeholders and the public in general is a very, very important capacity. It's a very, very important thing that NGOs need to learn and need to cultivate. And also, in the contemporary era, we find that the social media is playing a huge role in everybody's life. How can NGOs effectively use the social media to build awareness, perform advocacy, and raise funds? We find that crowdfunding has become something very, very important in today's times. So how to leverage these new technologies, how to leverage these new ways of communicating with people? These are some of the things that NGOs need to very, very consciously develop and very, very consciously learn. And many of these things will be covered in the subsequent lectures that you will be listening to and the subsequent course material that you will be engaging with. To conclude, we find that the contemporary challenges facing the world, the need to realize the Sustainable Development Goals and to build an inclusive society, these demand cooperation and collaboration of the state, of civil society, of corporates, and of wider communities. And NGOs have a vital and vibrant role to play in this regard. In order to perform these functions of service provision, of advocacy, and becoming change makers, NGOs must strategize effectively and manage their resources optimally. And for this, development of leadership and human resource development are crucial dimensions. Knowledge about legal, financial, and administrative matters is crucial in helping NGOs to maintain accountability and transparency. Credible, responsible, well-managed NGOs are much more likely to attract robust funding and support from stakeholders. Thank you, learners. I hope that this lecture has been effective and has helped you understand some of the very, very crucial problems that NGOs face in order to be of service to society. Thank you.